Nobody knows anything about Drew Lock, and while we all love Tommy DeVito, at this point, I don't consider him as viable as some, so I'm not doing that. Think about the commitment that the Giants made to him. If you make that commitment, you got to ride it out until you get your final answer. Now, I'm not here to make excuses, and in the eyes of some, maybe you have gotten your final answer. There's been a lot of tape and a lot of games where Jones has been a Giant. Things haven't gone well. Do you think he's fully healthy yet? Well, the answer might be yes, because if he's out there, then he's healthy. But do you think that he's sharp, or do you think he's a little rusty? I think that Daniel Jones comes out, plays better against the Commanders, and even if he doesn't, I'm riding into October. Before I banish him for good, I'm playing him the next 5 games.
Well, here's what I think about Daniel Jones. He stinks! We've gone over this. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it. Unfortunately, Daniel Jones himself even knows it. That's why he's broken. Now, when we had this conversation on Monday, I said what you're saying now as far as once you make the decision. I would never have made that decision going back years, right? We've been over this before. We know it's going into year 6. And maybe after year 3, certainly before Dable and Shane ever, coached a game or whatever, had a game under their belt, I would not have had Daniel Jones be the quarterback. With all that being said, their plan was Daniel Jones this year. So the idea of benching him after 1 week is absurd. Now, are you saying, just to be clear, if he struggles first half against Washington, you're not benching him?
I thought that was pretty clear. That's exactly what I said. No matter what, he's playing.
See, that's where we disagree, because I'm trying to win football games if I'm Dable. And Shane, too, they got to win some football games. I'm not talking about long-term benching. That could be for another day. If, let's just focus on week 2, the Giants come out there and they're flat again, and somehow Washington and Dan Quinn's defense shuts down Daniel Jones, or Daniel Jones just himself looks like he did against Minnesota. If they don't pull him, they are telling you that it's more important to try and fix Daniel Jones and squeeze whatever's left in him as opposed to winning a football game, and that's where I take major issue.
Okay, I get that, but are they really saying that, or are they just saying, once again, we believe in this player because we've won with him before? And there's a difference.
Yeah, fair enough, but I still think that's a major mistake. They've already hitched their wagon to Daniel Jones.
Correct.
If you dig in too deep, then this season could get ugly quick. Remember, this is Washington here. This is not the Niners. This is not some top team that, Cowboys or Eagles. This is Washington. This is another, on paper, winnable game. We saw how that played out week 1 with this team. If it plays out similarly in the first half, if it plays out like it did in week 1 in the first half against Washington, you've got to make a move. Now, again, I just want to be clear. I'm not talking about long-term moves.
I got you.
Because I don't think necessarily going to Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito is the answer. And I, too, would give Jones more time just because it's their plan. Like, once you make that plan, you can't go away from it 2 weeks in. However, in game, if he is struggling and cannot move the football, I am benching his ass and then evaluating what happens with the next guy, assuming that Drew Lock goes in there.
Okay, so this, to me, really, this is the essence of sports radio.
Right.
If you really think about it, like, firing Coach X or Coach Y, or benching quarterback X or quarterback Y, and that's fine. And we've had, you and I as listeners growing up, you and I on the air, and for many more years here at the Fan, those discussions will never go away. We do it with Cashman, we do it with Boone, we do it all the time, right? But you got to have an answer. The easiest thing to say is get rid of this guy, and I'm always open to that conversation. Who you bringing in?
Right.
And see, you beat me to it. And maybe if there's somebody more viable, and again, no disrespect to Tommy DeVito, I love his story. I don't think he's nearly good enough to hand the ball to now and try to play 16 or 15 and a half games and lead the Giants to wins. If I'm wrong, and I'd happily be wrong on the local kid, I don't think that I am, but I could be. But I wouldn't do that. And Drew Lock's done nothing.
Right.
Drew Lock has done nothing. So you've got to look at this from the football perspective, which I think we all understand what he's good at, what he's not, and the whole Daniel Jones experience, which has been frustrating, I grant you. But you also now have to incorporate the human level stuff. Do you really think? Now, if they do, and it works, maybe they got bigger stones than I thought. Maybe they're more secure than I thought. Do you really think after giving him this extension, coming off the ACL after a game and say 13 minutes of game 2, they're going to banish this guy to the bench? Number one, they won't. And number 2, in my opinion, that would be irresponsible.
But then they may lose the game, and now you're 0-2.
But they might win the next one with them.
Well, okay. So
like they won it in 2022.
Here's the fundamental disagreement.
Yeah.
I know what Daniel Jones is.
And what is he? What is he?
Not good enough.
Okay, but
not the franchise quarterback.
Fair enough. But
like, I've made my
more
decision.
specific though. You said we know he's not the
Right.
But what? Give me more. What is he? A little more specific there.
So the Giants need a new franchise quarterback.
Okay.
I know. I've made my mind up. I don't know where they're at. Clearly, they thought he was going to be the guy this year. They thought he was the best option this year, so maybe they're further evaluating him, whatever it may be. Some say deep down they know he's not it, but they had no choice, whatever. I'm done with Daniel Jones. So I'm not looking to see what he can do in week 3 or week 6. That would not be my plan.
Okay.
I'm trying to win football games. I also would assume and also say I know to a certain extent, but I haven't watched Drew Lock for 6 years like I have with Daniel Jones. I'm assuming Drew Lock is not that guy
He's not.
either. But he may give them a better chance to win games. If you're not about winning football games and you're all about just finding out once and for all in their minds what Daniel Jones is, then it would make sense to keep him in there. Quarterbacks sometimes get benched when they look as bad as Daniel Jones does, even if it's week 2 against a team that you should beat if you're trying to get a win. I mean, that's just, now again, this is hypothetical, seeing how it plays out. I'm not saying bench Jones because you think you could have the next quarterback. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't know what DeVito is long-term. We could assume that he's not going to be it just because of where he was drafted, because they have him third string, even after the success that he had last year, relative success.
Yep.
But I did see him do more with same, if not similar, exact same, if not similar to what Daniel Jones had to work with a year ago. DeVito did more with that. I'm not saying he's better than Daniel Jones. I really don't know about Tommy DeVito. I haven't seen enough. So do you want to see what he can do moving forward? Even for me, BT, it's not about that. I'm about winning football games. And if Daniel Jones goes out there again in the first half in week 2 in Washington and looks like he did in week 1, I'm making a change at halftime just to try to win a game, and I'll worry about week 3 after the fact.
888-808-1019. BT and Sal on the Fan. Brandon, Tierney, Sal, Licata. She'll get to these calls. Listen, I get it. I don't think you're nuts. I wouldn't do it. What I'm going to try to do is tap into something that I've already seen that's already got me wins. I know you're trying to win the game against the Commanders, and I've seen enough from Jones to think that if he's physically right, and if he wasn't, he wouldn't be out there, that you can at least somehow massage and manipulate this parts of this season to squeeze some wins out of this roster with him more than Locke and more than DeVito.
Now, one thing I will say,
and I thought he handled. I meant to say, I thought he handled this very well. Like, to me. And Daniel Jones has always been steady, sometimes too steady. Yeah. Sometimes you wish he was a little more, not volatility, but a little more emotion, a little bit more, a little bit more oomph, a little bit more dog, at least outwardly. We know he's tough because he's not afraid to take hits. I mean, going out there, being a verbal leader, a physical presence like that. But if he would have said something different yesterday, I don't know if I would have a different opinion today. But I don't know that I'd feel so good about this because what he said, hey, I've got to be better. I've heard it all. I'm good. I've got to be better. We've got to be better. They have a right to boo. That was not a weak-minded, broken quarterback. That's a guy who's won here, not at the highest level like Eli and Phil or Hostetler, but he's won here. He gets it. He knows the deal. He's had success. If it's 20-3, I'm not pulling him. BT and Sound on the Fan. 888-808-1019. Rob is in Rockland with BT and Sound. What's going on, Robbie?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing?
Good.
What's up, Rob?
Hey, so listen, Sal, I agree with you for a part of what you're saying. I want to win now. Everything's about winning now. But the problem is, if he goes out there and he sucks again, you got to take him out just because of his injury problem that he has and the injury clause he has in his contract. If he gets injured and he's out for the season, guess what? We're stuck paying that contract for the next 2 more years.
Well, then don't play him at all because it's football. It's not chess. You can get popped. You could have got popped quarter one, game one.
Right.
I mean,
I understand that.
Okay.
Listen, but I'm still trying to win. But if he goes out there and he's crapping the bed, I mean, you got to pull him because just for the simple fact of his injury.
At what point?
His whole injury history.
I got you. At what point do you think that they would deploy this? And by the way, that is an important point, one that I was going to bring up later, not now. But when do you think that the Giants should start to look at the injury, the contract, what triggers, et cetera? Go ahead. When?
I don't know. I don't know. It's sooner than later.
Well, it's not week 2. I can promise you that.
You got the neck. You got the.
But
knee.
it's not week 2.
But at the end of the day, there's still nobody better on that roster than him at quarterback.
You don't know that.
No, I do.
You don't know that.
Who's better?
Drew Lock's not better than him.
No way.
And Tommy DeVito.
You don't know that. I get why you're saying that. Who's more accomplished? Where Daniel Jones took the team to the playoffs? Fine. But again, I saw last year Tommy DeVito with the same exact situation, the messy offensive line. Now, again, it wasn't an offense that's going to light it up.
No.
But he was better. He made use of some of the weapons that he had. He had more success. There was more energy. The Giants were winning with him as opposed to with Daniel Jones. Here's where I disagree. I'm not worried about the injury stuff yet because to your point, BT, if you were worried about that, he shouldn't be playing, period.
Correct.
He could get hurt as he has on any given play at any week. So if you're worried about the contract, then he shouldn't be out there, period. At some point, they'll address that. That's going to be later down the road, assuming that he doesn't get hurt, right away. I'm worried about, all I'm talking about is week 2. I'm trying to win week 2. If Daniel Jones goes out there in the first half against Washington and looks like he did against Minnesota, how do you not make a change to try to get a win? I don't care that it's week 2. Their season is on the line here. You lose one at home the way you did to Minnesota. If you can't beat Washington, you're 0-2 looking at a daunting schedule. You're dead. So you got to do whatever you can to win that game. It doesn't mean that I'm transitioning from Jones to DeVito or Jones to Locke permanently.
Yeah, but once you pull Jones, it's over.
Maybe.
That needs to be said.
But it doesn't have to be.
Well, it doesn't, but it will be. If they're getting, again, the premise of ugly stuff on Sunday, 2 quarters away from falling to 0-2 with the daunting schedule, Jones showing nothing if that happens, and, you and others, by the way, say bench him. That's it. There's no, and imagine if they actually win, which would be good for the Giants, but that would be the end for Joe. And I'm okay with that.
Right.
I just don't think that they would win.
Well, are we trying to win games?
Yes. Yes. 100%. That's the main objective.
If we're trying to win games, and we saw what we've seen with Jones for 6 damn years, and he does it again in the first half in Washington, you've said it more than me. I really don't think Shane and Dable are on the hot seat. But if it continues the way that it did in week 1, they should be on the hot seat. So I would assume Shane talked about winning games. Dable talked about scoring points and winning games. You've got to do in that game, in that moment, whatever it takes to give you the best chance to win the game. If Jones looks like he did in the first half Sunday, like he did against Minnesota, they better make a quarterback change.
888-808-1019, BT and Sal, inside of our Town Fair Tire studio. Friends at Town Fair remind you that you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Isn't it fun talking about quarterbacks being benched 1 week into the season? Dante's in East Brunswick. Dante, BT and Sal, what's happening, man?
What's going on, fellas?
Hey.
What's up, Dante?
I think, if you look at Jones' career, the one team he actually plays well against is the Redskins, or the Commanders, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you give him this week, and if it's not going well, I think you pull the plug. And not only just for the sake of the season, I think for the sake of some of the young guys, the receivers. I mean, if he can't sit in there in the pocket and make some throws to guys like Neighbors and Wandell, and even if you look at, Hyatt, I don't know why he was on the field, but I think
that's not Jones' fault.
I think part of the reason he wasn't, though, is because of Jones. He has a little bit of a connection with Slayton. So Slayton was getting those reps on the outside for whatever reason. I just think for those guys, for their development more than anything, to get out of this rut of just playing bad football and offense, if he can't get it done this week, it's only week 2. I know the season might be on the brink, but you gotta make that move early just to get some of those young guys those reps and get them a guy that's actually going to deliver the football, take some shots with the ball.
But who is that guy? Who?
Listen, anybody at this point.
That's not the answer. And this is what I said before. Thanks for the call, man. And I respect your opinion, but the answer at the end is one that baffles me. So who's it going to be? And Dante's answer exactly was, quote, anybody. It doesn't matter, end quote. That's the worst answer you could possibly give.
Well, there are only 2, and neither of those 2 we believe are going to be the answer moving forward, which is why I simplify it to this year. If I already know that Jones is not the answer in my mind, and by the way, this is not 1 week, it's not 2 years, this is year 6 for Daniel Jones and a god-awful performance in week 1. If he goes out there and looks awful again in the first half, I have to see what Drew Lock can do to maybe, I mean, that's why backup quarterbacks sometimes have success. Doesn't mean that Lock is better moving forward. Who knows how it plays out? I don't know. Maybe Lock is even worse against Washington, and then they lose the game anyway, and they say, well, week 3, we're going to go back to Daniel Jones. Whatever it may be. The answers right now, it's only 2. It's either Drew Lock or DeVito. Neither guy on the roster none of the Giants' 3 quarterbacks give you real hope for the future. We know what Drew Lock is, kind of. He's been a backup. Disappointing pick. He's turned into a backup. Now,
sure, a highly paid backup at $5 million.
I mean, look, we saw Geno Smith years down the road. So is it over for Drew Lock? No.
Not necessarily. Look at Sam Darnold.
Okay, there you go. Whatever. So we don't know if these guys could turn into maybe adequate starters at some point. Now, with DeVito, I'm less inclined to say that we know more about. I really don't know. We saw some success, but you know the limitations from DeVito. There's a reason why he's a third-string quarterback. Doesn't mean that they know all the answers or he can't be it. But the real answer should be they should have drafted a damn quarterback, and then we could be talking about making that transition in week 6, 7, 8, depending on the way things go. I'm just worried about BT trying to win a game on Sunday.
Listen, that is the objective. But you said something before, and you've seen Tommy DeVito play well, so you wouldn't be averse to going to him. Well, I mean, did you forget that you also saw Daniel Jones win a road playoff game?
No, I know.
I mean, the way we lump. I mean, it's not like everybody that is so quick to discard Jones, although it is 6 years. But the circumstances, the injuries, the coaches, there are things there that we know. It hasn't been one linear 6-year run because the Giants have been a train wreck of a franchise that really complicated the 6-year run. So it's a tough evaluation. Eventually that expires. Trust me, I know that excuse goes out the window. But I mean, we seem to like prop up every little account. Oh, Tommy DeVito did this. Oh my God, Drew Lock could throw it 70 yards on a fly. The guy who's actually starting this weekend went into a dome and won a road playoff game.
That's why I believed in him a year ago.
Okay, so but now you abandon the belief.
Yes.
1 week into can you let him
it's not
trust
1
his
week.
knee again?
No. That was my belief a year ago. Going into the season, and he was god-awful. And then watch him in the preseason again, he's making mistakes that rookies make. And then you watch him in week 1, and he can't make a right decision. So, and I didn't like him before that. So to me, the aberration was that he won a road playoff game. And he also did so in throwing for 15 touchdowns that year, which is embarrassing for an NFL quarterback. And year 6, this is not just short-sighted 1 week, I'm ready to pull the plug on Jones. I understand why they're going to stick with him. I thought it's ridiculous to even bring up the idea of who would be the starting quarterback in week 2. All I'm saying is if he is struggling in the first half of this game on Sunday, they better pull him to see if they can kind of jumpstart the offense. Again, hypothetical, depending on how the game plays out. If they're not scoring any points and they're trailing to Washington, they need to do whatever they can to win that game. And at that point, assuming that it goes the way that it did against Minnesota, maybe the best chance would be to go with Drew Lock.
Real quick, you say what you say that they should do that. Do you think that they would do that?
I do.
I don't.
I do think so. I think, now I'm painting a dire situation here. Losing, Dable knowing he's going, getting embarrassed by Washington.
I got you.
In that case, I think he's got to figure out a way to jumpstart the team. I think that he would.